Hello, I'm Christina, and I'm here with Martina,
Hello, welcome.
and we are your podcast hosts for everyday, ordinary, extraordinary women. We were inspired to create this podcast after pondering this question: what would a world look like where we can be inspired by every person? Usually, we're very quick to compare and judge ourselves and others, and when we do that, everybody's losing. Depending on my point of view, I can either feel small because I come out lacking or arrogant and dismissive because I feel superior. Those are the only two options from that perspective, and neither of those options make us feel very good. So here's our thought: someone's everyday normal is someone else's extraordinary. Judgment comes from our first impressions. So we invite you, the listener, to go beyond your first impressions and see the magic everywhere. There's inspiration in everyone if we're willing to look. And today we are really excited to have with us Nicole. Nicole, welcome and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Miale. I live in Vermont currently, but I lived most of my adult life in New York and Connecticut. But it was a childhood dream to go further north where there was more cold and snow. And I finally made that move last October. And I'm on an adventure up here in Vermont. I'm exploring, I'm reinventing myself, rewilding in some respects. And it's just thrilling to be here and to be invited to participate in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's funny because most people say they want to go south to the warmth, right? You want to
Yeah.
go, you want to go north to the cold. So
Yeah.
in your previous life, what did you do? Like, what is like you were a writer, you worked for what is it, magazine, right?
Yeah. So I've had a long career. I spent about 15 years um, developing medical education programs that were funded by pharmaceutical companies. And those were, big multi-million dollar contracts that I was responsible for securing and executing. And at the time, I loved what I did. I thought I was really helping people because we were teaching doctors and nurses how to use new medications. And I thought that that was, that was just really rewarding work. But then my eyes started to open a little bit as I worked on, my 30th or 40th slide kit, where there was one slide about the non-pharmacologic options for managing whatever the condition was. And they were always the same. And I remember saying to my boss, why don't we spend more time on these things and less time on the drugs? Because these things are always there. Things like sleep, nutrition, spirituality, family and friend network, support, um, exercise, spiritual well-being, right? All of these things were always on this list. So they knew about them. But what the work I was doing at the time focused on the other thing, right, which was the drugs. But this started me thinking. And so I went back to school to get a master's degree in experiential health and healing. The degree is now called integrative health and healing. They changed it. And that was the start of an extraordinary journey for me in self-awareness and really just looking at the world through a whole different lens. Because the program, which was 2 years, explored all different philosophies of health and healing and looked at the ways we heal and the ways we prevent ourselves from healing. And it looked at the individual's responsibility for being well or unwell. And these were all notions that I had never heard anything about before. My mother was a Reiki master way before it was cool. She was a standard bearer. She was a flag, and I told her many times over she was crazy. Mom, there's no such thing. You're crazy. Well, I became Reiki certified as I was going through my certification, my graduate program. I started working with energy myself. One of the prerequisites for the class is you had to do a lot of journaling. I had kept a journal for years. As Martina mentioned, I've always been a writer. That's what my undergraduate degree is in journalism. And the master's degree program brought me back to my writing. I started journaling. I filled books and books and books. And it also got me reading again, reading nonfiction memoirs, really interesting journeys that people had taken, and really just piqued my curiosity and love of learning again. And so people kept asking me as I was going through that program, what are you going to do at the end of this? Like, what's this going to do for your career? What are you going to do? And I kept saying, I don't know. I just know I'm supposed to do it. And whatever I'm supposed to do next will appear when the time is right. And that, I didn't know it then, but that has really become my approach to life, especially as I've tapped more and more into my intuition and my trust and surrender. So I went into this program, which was expensive. It was 2 years. It was a lot of commitment and time, and didn't know why I was doing it. And I came out, and there were some stops and starts along the way, but it led me to purchasing a magazine called Natural Awakenings, which was just the perfect marriage of all of the different experiences that I had gained to that point. I'd used my journalism background, my sales background, my client service background, my writing, the master's degree. It just married everything into this beautiful tapestry. And I published Natural Awakenings in Fairfield County, Connecticut, and Litchfield County for 7 years. And I was having so much fun with it that a couple of years in, well, I guess in 4 years in, I purchased a second edition, which was the Hartford County, Connecticut edition. And that, unfortunately, stretched my resources so thin that I stepped off the path of wellness and into a path of overwork and stress, and wound up working myself into some major health problems. So in 2020, unfortunately, I sold one magazine and had to close the other because I couldn't work. And for 2 years, between 2020 and 2022, I couldn't work at all. I was just, I was very sick, and I had to rely on pharmaceuticals, many doctors, many specialists, as well as everything else I had previously learned. And I'm happy to say that is in my rearview mirror. I'm stable, which is why I was finally able to take that leap and come up to Vermont, which is something I had wanted to do for a long time.
Whew, that is quite a journey, Nicole.
That's a lot of information. Sorry.
No, there's nothing to be sorry about. It's
I
just
couldn't figure out where to stop the story. I'm like, I'm just going to keep going till I get back to Vermont.
and you have come. I mean, yeah, I'm at a loss for words. Martina, jump in.
Well, it's just incredible. Like, one of the things that I hear over and over is that trust, like, just trust. It doesn't, like, I don't have to know the answers. It's gonna show itself, right? And most of us don't live that way. Most of us want to know all the answers right now before I even take the first step, rather than, well, I guess I'm doing it for whichever reason I will find out later, right? That is just so beautiful and so powerful. And then hearing how, how you came about finding all that integrative health, for yourself, and how that served you, and the like, even when you were not well, like the marrying of both of the fields that you were one that you started with and one that you cut into, right? It's like there's so much in there in what you shared. It's just so beautiful. Like one of the things that keeps coming up for me is like it's divine timing, right? Everything always happens in divine timing. And there's no need to push or cajole or manipulate. Everything always happens in divine timing and in divine design. And all that we went through culminates in who we are today. And we're far from done, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, one of the questions on the list that you sent me was, what's your biggest accomplishment? And I said, I don't know yet. That was my answer. I was like, I'm not done. I don't know yet, you know. Um, but yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you just said. And I learn it over and over again because I fall into the trap, the habit, the habitual habit trap of thinking that I need to make things happen, right? And to some extent, we do. We can't sit passively and wait for things to come to us as we sit on our couch going, come on, manifest, bring it to me. You know, no, you need to be actively engaged because otherwise you miss the opportunities when they approach, right? Or when they appear. But working too hard is what led me into my, illness. And I am ever mindful of not falling back into that trap. And one of the things I realized when I moved to Vermont was I caught myself kind of just recreating my old habits up here. Like, no, 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 we came here to do something different.
That's really powerful, because how often do we do that, right? Where we think a move is going to make the big change, right? But until we change those underlying patterns, whether they're thought patterns or rituals or habits, it's going to be the same thing over and over again, no matter where we are.
It's a mindset shift. The mindset shift and the trust and the surrender that Martina was just talking about, those are the pieces that I think are really the keys. Because at any moment, we can make a change. But if we don't have the mindset to recognize that change is needed, it's a non-starter. One of my favorite, I don't know the right word for it, but I've never really been a chess player, but for some reason this visual really works for me when it comes to life and life decisions, right? I picture life as a chessboard, and every player is in its position, and at any given moment we have an array of choices about moves that we can make. And it almost doesn't matter what move you make. All that matters is that you've changed the board. You've now changed the position of everything on the board. And so it opens up an array of possibilities that wouldn't have been able to happen if you hadn't stepped sideways or backwards or run along the back, right? So sometimes we don't know why we're making a move. And it may only be a move that gets you to the next move.
Yeah.
When I moved to this little cabin in Vermont, it was very much with the mindset that it was going to be a transitional thing. I thought I might be here for 6 months. That's, was the initial plan. I was going to be here for about 6 months. Well, it's been a year. October 6th will be a year. And now I'm planning to stay till next spring, at least. But this isn't my final destination. This is, a stopping point, where I was to learn certain things and have certain experiences before I was able to go to the next set of chessboards, I think.
Really good. Really good. So, Nicole, if we really knew you, what would we know about you?
If you really knew me, you would know that the only thing that really matters to me is my animals. I, yeah, sometimes I think, I don't have a will. I should really have a will. And then I think, I don't care about any of my stuff. All I care is that my animals are taken care of, and my close friends and family know that. So I don't really need a will. I don't care what happens to the stuff, not that I have very much anymore, but I love animals and nature. I wanted to be a vet when I was a kid until I found out how much math and science would be involved. And I said, oh, that's probably not for me then. But I do a lot of work with animals. I have 3 cats and 2 dogs. And the biggest joy in my day is going hiking with my dogs and walking with them. And what else? What else? You'd know that I can be honest to a fault. Sometimes I don't know how to not say things. I've been told I'm intimidating, but I don't get that. I think I'm approachable, but I don't know.
I get the same thing, Nicole.
Do you? We're
Yep.
such nice people. I don't get it.
It's that Brooklynite in me comes out.
Is that right?
And the Italian too.
That too.
Yeah, maybe that's it, right? One of the questions that you guys had sent that I thought was really interesting was, what is your superpower?
I was just going to ask you that. What do you
Were you?
consider your
Yeah, because
superpower?
that is one that there was a networking group that I went to when I was publishing the magazines, and she would ask that question from time to time. And so I sort of had my answer. I'm like, oh, I know this one. I've answered this. Then I was talking to a friend on the phone, and she said something else. And I went, oh, I never thought about it that way. And so now I kind of have another way of looking at that. So my answer always was authenticity. I show up as who I am. And it doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States or the guy at the transfer station. I'm going to treat you the same way. I am who I am. Like me, don't like me, I'll get over it. Um, and she said, yes, I agree with that. She said, but what I've always found most inspirational about you is that when you hit a roadblock on the path that you're on, you may pause for a little bit and, kind of stop, but you don't get stuck. You just step into a different flow. And I said, that's how you see me? And she said, yeah, I've seen you do it over and over. And I was like, huh, I never, right? We just do what we do. We don't think how it appears. When I was sick, people kept telling me how brave I was. You're so brave. You're so courageous. And I kept saying, I'm just getting through my life one day at a time. Like, I'm not aware that I have an option. But of course, there's always an option, right? You can be a victim, or you can learn to you can transcend the situation. And I fired doctors, specialists in their field, who tried to tell me how my trajectory was going to go. And in the end, when I finally found a specialist I could really work with, the last time I saw him was in June. And he showed me where I had started, on his chart and where I had wound up. And he said, they tell us in medical school that this is possible, but I've never seen someone do it. He said, and I use you now as an example to all my other patients who tell me, oh, it's too hard. I can't change the diet. I can't do this. I can't do that. He said, yes, you can. Look what she did. And that is so, I don't know. I went through what I went through. I had to go through what I did. But if even one person is helped by that, then it's okay.
It's all worth it.
Yeah.
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 And And you're saying, yeah, people say, oh, you're so brave. You just do what needs to be done, right?
That's
I
it.
I can relate to that, like with regards to my son, when people say, oh my goodness, right? And I'm like, I just do what needs to be done, right? So wallowing will not make a difference in anybody's life at all. It's just forward. That's the only way to go, right? And I think
Right.
it's beautiful that you had the guts to fire doctors, because doctors often are, we're in a way we're so disconnected to our own bodies that
Yes.
we hand over our health to people who don't really know us in a way, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that was something that just blew me away, when I was in Switzerland, and my aunt told, like, she had a pretty bad ski accident. And she told me that the doctor told her that she needed to do this or that. And she told the doctor no, you know, and,
Hmm.
and it's like, how cool, right? Most of the times we live in a world where doctors are looked at as little gods. And that does a disservice to the doctors as well. Because I remember
Right.
being in the hospital with my son, and the doctor comes in full force, and I start questioning, and he got all miffy around me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
and because he doesn't like it, right? It's like, how dare I
Hmm.
question? And I'm like, I'm just asking questions. Like, you know, you're the expert in your field, and can we work together here, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's part of what I hear in what you're sharing, which is so beautiful and so powerful, right? That it's like, no, I'm in the driver's seat, and you're here to assist me. It's not you're in the driver's seat and I just come along for the ride and see wherever you're going to take me, right? And
Right.
and that's such a big issue many of us have with our health, right? That we're not fully responsible for our own health and well-being because we're so disconnected, because we believe that our worth is here, right?
Right.
But this cannot go anywhere if the rest is not functioning, right?
Right.
So that's part of what I hear and what you're sharing, and it's just so beautiful and so powerful.
I would also like to add, Nicole, that I think you have another superpower. I'm not sure how to say this. You're a
Oh.
powerful networker, connector, like putting the right people together. Um, like you introduced me to the animal communicator that made such a huge difference in my world. But you have so many connections from your magazine that you're so masterful at being like, oh, I've got a resource for you, and it is a superpower. So just wanted to give you that one too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was something I used to really pride myself on. And it's funny, even up here in Vermont, where I hardly know anyone, I still am doing that. I'll be talking to someone and they'll say, oh, I need someone. Oh, here, let me give you so and so's number. I barely know anyone, but it's just, yeah, that's just who
That's
I
one of your
am, I guess.
superpowers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But, it's interesting that we're talking so much about this topic because I have a manuscript in process, a book that I've started years and years ago. And it started out actually as my master's thesis.
Mm.
And I keep adding to it and adding to it and adding to it. And it has a name and it has an outline. And what it's lacking is, putting it all together and finishing it, right? But this is the theme, this is the book, is the fact that, it's not, because we hear all the time about integrative medicine and integrative physicians. Well, the integrative patient is the point, right? Because if the person isn't integrating these things, then it doesn't matter what the doctors are doing. It doesn't matter what your acupuncturist does or what medications you're taking. If the individual is not participating and paying attention and marrying the effects. Um, it's funny, Martina, when you talked about telling doctors no, I had a flashback. I was 21. I think I was just barely 21, and I had to go to the emergency room. And for a period of time, I was having these fainting spells. They couldn't figure out why. I was in my late teens, and they put me on Dilantin for a year, which is an epilepsy medication, which is a very potent, neurological medication. Then they figured out I didn't need it, but it took so long to wean me off of it. And so I go to the emergency room this particular day with my mother. I guess I had fainted. And so as soon as the emergency room doctor heard my history, they said, okay, start her on Dilantin. And I said, no, just like that. And my mother looked at me and the doctor looked at me and said, excuse me. And I said, no, I'm not in any imminent danger. I'm not seizing right now. So we have plenty of time to do the testing necessary. The last time I was on Dilantin, it took a year to get me off of it because I did not have a seizure disorder. So unless I'm in imminent danger of something, we can wait on starting that medication.
Mhm.
Well, the doctor was not happy. My mother was white. I mean, she was just aghast that I was 21. So even then, as young and unexperienced and ill-educated on these themes as I was, I knew that my responsibility was to look out for myself.
And how dare you?
And
I'm
I
I'm
hadn't
much more
thought
polite.
about that in years.
I'm much more polite. I remember when I went to the pediatrician, and it was the first time my son had a very high fever, and it, as a new mom, right, it totally stresses you out. But it's
Of
normal.
course.
It's normal that kids spike like that and then come down again, right?
Mm.
But I was just like, it was the first time. I couldn't reach my mom, so I was just freaking out. And I found the pediatrician. I went to the pediatrician. The pediatrician said, well, I'm going to give him antibiotics in case he gets an ear infection. And I'm like, thank you very much. I'm not coming back. Right. But I did not say it out loud. Right.
Mhm.
I love that you're so clear. And it's like, no, I was much more, I'm going to say polite, but subdued is probably the better word, or trying not to rock the boat too much. In that sense, that was just saying, okay, I'm just gonna go home. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna give him the antibiotics. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna
Right,
come back.
right.
And I went through pediatricians like crazy. Until I found my pediatrician, and
Mm.
we were talking about, health, and my pediatrician says there's actually three big pillars for health. And that's one is exercise, one is nutrition, and then it's relationships.
Sure.
Those are
Yeah.
the three big ones that like to be healthy, like that's the big
Mhm.
ones that you need, right? And so that's why when you were talking, it was like, yeah, it's like we usually just don't take those into consideration. We put our hands into the ones, right? And they found, like in hospitals, that when people start praying or meditating, that it makes such a huge difference, like such a huge difference. But you
Yeah.
also have to be able to believe, like you have to have hope, right? So,
Well,
yeah.
and you have to be willing to release the idea that you know how to fix everything.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to be wrong and willing to reach out and say, I don't know what I need. I just need help. Somebody help me. I had a situation while I'm in Vermont here. I'm working part-time at a country store. And it's very fun. It's a tourist, destination. Is an incredible view. So a lot of people travel just to come, and we have donuts and fudge and nothing healthy whatsoever. But it's a fun place to work. The people who come in are in a good mood. They're happy. They're on vacation. They're visiting friends, and so I enjoy it, and I get to work with the people, and the products are nice for the most part. And anyway, we had a tragedy um, um, at at the store, or right outside the store. A customer was run over and killed. And I arrived on the scene like 30 seconds after it happened. My angels were looking out for me because if I had been on time for work that day, I would have been getting out of my car as it happened. But I came over the hill, and anyway, I had a very, very powerful reaction to the whole thing, as you can imagine, right? So it triggered an autoimmune flare for one of the conditions that I have. And so within a matter of days, I was in so much pain. Everything was locking up. I couldn't I was trying to do what I could do, but I didn't know where to turn. And so I called an acupuncturist up here that I'd never talked to before. I left a message. I called a massage therapist. I found all these numbers and I just started calling and no one called me back. And I'm like, I'm walking around and I'm trying to do what I can, but for myself, but I'm like, I need help. So unexpectedly, I had to make a trip back to Connecticut for a doctor's appointment. That wasn't a scheduled thing. Something came up. They wanted to make sure it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a problem. Completely unrelated to what I was going through at the time. Within 12 hours of being at my mother's house, I was not in pain. And I got my first good night's sleep in a few weeks. And I felt absolute utter exhaustion. You know how you feel like after adrenaline has coursed through you and now it's the other side of it and you are just completely drained. Well, that's how I felt. And I said to my mother, it's because I feel safe here. I just put everything down. Nothing hurts anymore. And I can't believe it was that simple. Nobody else was involved. I mean, my mom was there taking care of me, a little bit, right? Making dinner and making me laugh, right? But, and then to talk about divine timing, there's a massage therapist and healer in New Milford in Connecticut, who is just extraordinary. And, when I lived there, I used to go see her at least once a month. And every time I would go back to Connecticut, I would call and she would never have an appointment available because she's so in demand. Well, so I called her because my schedule shifted a little bit and I had an opening. And I said, I know it's crazy, but by any chance, do you have something tomorrow? She said, I have a 2-hour opening between 10 and 12. I said, book me. And I said to her, I don't think I can have massage right now. Everything hurts so much. I don't want to be touched. I said, but I think I need some shamanic work. I think I need work on an underlying level. She said, okay, just come in. We'll see what needs to be done. And I spent 2 hours with her. And when I left, I felt completely different. Now I was in so much pain, right? And so when I think about that, and I think about how many people are walking through life for years in that kind of distress and don't know any tools besides medication or alcohol or drugs, whatever their coping mechanism is, they don't know what they can do to help themselves, or where to look for other help. And that was, I don't know, it was eye-opening for me because I had almost forgotten myself while I was up here kind of isolated in the woods in Vermont. I'd kind of forgotten some of these things myself. And that just happened a month ago. So I think we get constant opportunities and reminders that we can pick up the baton at any time. Pick up our own baton, and change how we feel. I had a crazy, funny thing. Funny because everybody wound up okay. Story. A couple weeks ago, I was falling asleep on the couch, and my cats do go outside. I bring them in at night because there's so many predators around. But sometimes I fall asleep on the couch, so they're coming in a little later, But I give them their treats right before bed, and that makes sure that everybody comes in because they don't want to miss their treats. Cats are so ritualized like that. Anyway, I wake up on the couch and I realize that my big Garfield kitty, who never misses a meal, is not in the house, and that's unusual. And so I go out and I call, and he doesn't show up right away, and now I'm a little worried. So I go out with a flashlight and I'm shining it around the yard, and I'm calling now from the driveway, and I hear him calling back to me from kind of far. And I think, oh my gosh, he's in a tree. So I come back in, I get a headlamp, and I go out with a stronger flashlight, and I'm walking down the road, and there's no other houses on my road. I'm at the corner of a road, but I'm at the corner of two roads. But then there's no houses for a couple hundred feet up, and a half quarter mile even up the road from me. So somewhere between my house and the next house, he's across the street in the woods tree. And I find him because the light picks up his eyes up in the tree because I'm looking up because I'm that's the only reason he wouldn't come for food, right? He's up in this pine tree. He's way up in this pine tree. And I'm thinking, what am I? It's 12:30 at night because I'd fallen asleep on the couch. How am I going to get this cat down? So we have a shed that was left here by the previous owner. I go in the shed, there is a ladder. Okay, so I wake up my stepson. I said, you gotta help me. We gotta get this cat out of the tree. So there we are carrying this ladder down the street, right? We put the ladder up against the tree. We stretch the ladder out. It's a 10-foot ladder that extends to 20 feet. And the cat is still about 5 feet over. And I'm like, okay, I think you should go. He says, no, I think you should go. Neither of us could get up the ladder, right? I think I'm too heavy, right? If I climb on it and it slides sideways, he can't hold it. And he says, I can't do it. And I said, that's fair. I can't do it either. So now we have the ladder. And I keep talking to the cat. I talk to all my animals. So I keep telling the cat, jump down to me, jump down to me. And then I'm visualizing and sending him pictures of how to back down the tree. Because cats can get out of trees, but they have to back down. They have to come down the same way they went up. And most cats won't do that because it's so unnatural. I have another kitty who does it no problem. He's a pro. He zips up, zips down, no problem. This guy is stuck up in this tree and he just keeps staring at me like, get me out. And so I'm visualizing, I'm sending him images, how to climb down. I'm telling him, jump down to me. And it's just getting later and later. And so finally I said to my stepson, I don't know what to do. I think we're just going to have to leave him overnight. Oh, I even put out a post in the neighborhood Facebook page. Is anybody awake? It's 12:45 at night. But is anybody awake? My cat's in a tree. I need help. So at this point, I look at Alex and I said, I think we're just going to have to leave him till morning and call, the fire department or call somebody else that we know who's not afraid to go up the ladder. And I said, I don't know what else to do. And I turned, and the next thing I know, I am bent over. I put a hand on a different tree to brace myself. I am bent over, and I'm seeing stars, and I have no idea. And I yell, "Oh my God, Alex, the branch just broke. He fell out of the tree." And Alex says, "No, he jumped. He hit your head." And I said, "Oh my God, where is he?" He said, "He's right here." And I turned, and he's just standing on the ground, perfectly fine. And he runs off into the darkness. So now Alex and I are standing there. I'm holding my head, which is absolutely, just so painful. And I said, I think I have to go to the doctor. And so we come home. The cat had run home. We get him in. I check him all over. I actually called Carrie, the communicator you mentioned, Christina, called Carrie at 1 a.m, which you can only do with a very, very good friend, and said, "Oh my God, please tell me if he's okay. Do I have to take him to the ER or can I just go to the ER for myself first, And then I had this whole push and pull with myself because a normal person could just put some ice on their head and take Tylenol and go to bed, right? And see how it is in the morning. But I had a stroke in 2019. I'm on blood thinners. You can't do that with a head injury. You have to get a CAT scan. So there we are now at 12:30, now it's 1 a.m, going off to get, the ER doctor laughed at me. She laughed. She said, "A cat fell out of your head. How much have you been drinking tonight? What kind of drugs are you on?" I said, "I know it sounds funny, but it hurts. It's not a joke." So all this to say, so I get home, I called out of work the next day because my head hurt. It was not a concussion, but it was, a good whack from a 17-pound cat.
Probably some whiplash.
Yes, exactly. My next, but yeah, because I bent forward so quickly. So I started thinking to myself, if I were in Connecticut, who would I call if this happened? And there's a cranial osteopath who I used to see for years, for many years. And anytime something with my neck or my head happened, I would race over to see him. And I said, okay, so I've got to Google cranial osteopath in my area. And I don't find exactly that, but I find cranial sacral therapists. And I, check in with my intuition. I call one of them who's about 45 minutes away. I call one and I tell him I've had this accident. I know it's unlikely, but if you have an opening in the next couple of days, I would really love to be seen. I've already been to the ER. I've had the CAT scan. Everything, is okay from that regard. But he called me the next day and said, I have an opening today at 4. Can you come? Yes, I can. And so divine timing and synchronicities, right? So when I was in so much pain and, I called all these people and no one got back to me. And this time I needed someone, I made one call and that one person had exactly the right opening. And it just never ceases to amaze me when these things happen. And the cat was fine, by the way. Yeah, he was fine. Embarrassed. He was embarrassed. That's what he said.
It's incredible, the synchronicities, right? So
yeah,
go ahead.
And there was
to say something.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, I was going to say, it turned out there was a coyote stalking my yard because that night and for a few nights after, when I would take the dogs out, usually I don't go for walks with them at night, but my schedule was a little off. I kept catching the eyes of something in the yard. And so I actually had the communicator connect with the coyote and we made a deal to keep him away from my cats. So anyway, very interesting how things go.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had a magic wand and you could give people any quality, what would it be and why?
I'll remember this question because my answer was immediate. Compassion and empathy. There's too much division. There's too much separation. People are so quick, as you said in your intro, Christina, we're so quick to judge and to not put ourselves in the other shoe, in the other perspective. And it's not complicated. It shouldn't be. But I feel like we're becoming so many people anyway, are becoming more and more entrenched in the need to be right rather than the need to find common ground and to feel compassion with whatever someone's going through. It would solve so many problems.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. I think we have so many things that causes division in our lives, right? Whether it's man versus women or black versus white or rich, poor, Republican, Democrat. But we need to do the opposite, right? It's all about having compassion and perspective and being able to give space to have someone else is choosing to live their life, whether it makes you happy or not, right? Because this place would be really boring if we all lived our life exactly the same way.
Yeah. I think there's so much that has been lost, though, I feel like in society. I feel that judgment and exclusion has just become so much more acceptable. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. And it really startles me. And it's part of why I prefer life up here in the woods where there's more bear than people, you know. Um, I'm more comfortable. When I go to Fairfield County in Connecticut now, it's beautiful. You know, when I go to Litchfield to visit my mother, it's gorgeous, but there's too many people for me. It's, you know, it's same, you know, it's woods and, you know, it's gorgeous setting. The setting is very similar, but I'm finding the energy of people right now to be very exhausting. And yeah, I guess I wish people could just go back to the time-tested, proven, you know, do as I say. No, not that one.
Golden rule.
Yeah, the golden rule. Thank you.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, do unto others as you would do to yourself, you know, and I think that that's just, it's been lost.
Yeah. I think Martina said it the other day. I think we need to go beyond that because I think people, we don't even treat ourselves that nicely. So it's like treat each other like you
That's
would treat
true.
your favorite pet, right? Like,
Or your
Oh,
child, or
or your
your, yeah.
child, right? But
yeah.
because we don't even treat ourselves nicely anymore.
No, you're right.
Some people don't even
You're
treat pets
absolutely
nicely
right.
either. So you got to kind of, or their children to that matter. Um, but yeah,
You're right. There was a meme on Facebook that I actually posted on my page because I thought it was funny, but also accurate. It said, talk to yourself the way you talk to your dog.
Yeah,
What a
I
good
reposted
girl.
that one. Yeah, I
Yeah, what a good girl.
reposted
Look at
that
your
one.
beautiful belly. You know, you're so smart. You know, look what you can do. You know, whatever. I'm like, wow, look at that.
yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
And it's funny that, well, funny, interesting that you're saying that, because I just watched uh what is it? It was Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah having a conversation on relationships. And it was so interesting because one of the things they said is that women are actually much better at that than men are.
Mhm.
And you know, like that coming together and really talking to each other is missing, right? It's like
Yeah.
we live in this world where we substitute um, AI, sorry, I always mix it up, with human interaction, right? Or we have our phones, or you know, like we forget the
Mhm.
person that is right in front of us, right? And then
Right.
that just makes us really disconnected. Um, so it's interesting that you're sharing that because it's all inside of the same thing, right? It's just
Yeah.
like relatedness. Can I try and walk in somebody else's shoes rather saying, wow, you're an asshole because you think this way? It's like, wow, okay, what makes you think this way? Like, how
Right.
come you come to this conclusion? Um, you know, whichever other version of that, right?
Right. Right. You know, it always amazes me how in relationship you can have two people having a completely different experience within the same relationship. You know, and I think to Christina's point, you know, no one's the same. And so we are all coming at it from a different place with different expectations, different beliefs, different training, if you will. You know, we were modeled different things, different expectations. And I don't know that there's any way to find agreement or compromise without that extra dose of compassion and empathy and trying really, you know, making effort to understand, even for a moment, where the other person is coming from. You can't have any progress without it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's something, there's something,
Go ahead,
there's
Martina.
there's something else that popped in my mind, and that is that who I was yesterday is not who I am today, right?
Right.
Most of the times. But when we look at people, we just see the same person.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, no, we don't know who we're going to encounter today. right? Because we're shifting and changing constantly as well, right? And the moment we're set into this person is this way, we are stuck, they're stuck, everybody's stuck.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
And I'm going to assume that you guys have experienced this over your journeys. I certainly have experienced that as I've grown and changed, the people around me have had to shift as well. And if they didn't, then they were no longer in my life or didn't play as prominent a role in my life. That has been an ongoing theme, especially these last 4 or 5 years. A lot of changes in relationships, and some of it my conscious choice, some of it other people's conscious choice, right? And somehow you have to make peace with all of it, and find a new tribe, or find a way to work with what you still have. But it's a very interesting process, for I always I always say, sort of ironically, that ignorance truly is bliss, because you just, you don't have to change. You can just keep doing what you're doing, and, you're not responsible for anything. You can just be a victim, whatever, it wouldn't. But once you know enough, I mean, Esther Hicks and Abraham I remember her saying this over and over, them saying this, you know too much, you can't go back.
Mhm.
Right? It's a gift and a curse. It really is, because it's like, the carrot, like, come on, okay, you got that. Good. Now keep going. There's more, there's more, there's more. It's like, I just want to stay here. I don't want to know anymore. That's not an option. You can do it for a while, but then you gotta move again, and once you get to a certain point where you've been through the cycle enough, you start to get excited about it, at least for me, you know. Um, Moving to Vermont was a very big deal. There were a lot of moving pieces, a lot of unknowns. And a year later, there's still just as many moving pieces and a lot of unknowns. And I still have trepidations about where am I going? What am I doing? One of the questions on the sheet was, who are you in the world? And, where do you want to go? I'm like, I wish I knew, don't know, don't know. But I just keep moving. Just keep moving, and the right opportunities will show up. And if you miss it the first time, there's something else coming. It's okay. Because I used to worry about
And
that.
that's the divine timing, right?
Yeah,
It's like everything happens exactly as it's supposed to happen. Otherwise, it wouldn't happen that way, right? If we can
exactly.
really step into that, and that doesn't mean that we're going to be, just that we don't have to participate in our lives, and we're like, oh my
Right.
goodness, oh okay, well, no, we are part of it, but it would be great if we could give up control and manipulation and all that other fun stuff we try to pull on the universe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
I
stuff.
would like to know the reason the cat had to fall on my head, though. Couldn't there have been a less dramatic way for me to get to the craniosacral therapist?
Yeah. Nicole, as those crazy things happen in my life, I keep going to the universe. Okay, can we now do it easier next time? Like, can I do this the easy way and the faster way? I don't have to do it the hard, drawn out ways anymore. Like,
I
so get a
know.
little more clearer on my manifestation and my, like, okay, how about the easy way? Thank you. Thank you. The hard lessons were fun. And can we do the easy
Yeah.
lessons now? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this I couldn't agree more. I need to start repeating that a little bit more often, because this summer has been difficult. This has been rough with one thing after another. And I keep saying, like, okay, that's good. Like, I got the hard stuff. That's flow in some of the good stuff now, some of the easier stuff. That would be good,
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicole. So I know you're in transition, but would you like to talk about your writing and your writing coaching that you've been doing? And maybe that's something you may want to offer to our listeners.
Yeah, so in the past, and looking to start up again, probably this fall, I've run some really fun writing classes on Zoom. And they are for people who love to write and people who have never written before but are just curious about it. They are very low stress, low pressure. It's really exploratory and fun. And I do a little bit of coaching, so you learn a little bit about the craft of writing at the beginning. And then we have usually like timed writing periods where you can write about whatever you want. And then we do read our work to each other, which is fun, but it's not for critique, it's for support. It's for, I love the way you did this, or I really enjoy the way you do that. It's not about, oh, this would be stronger if you did. No, we don't do that kind of stuff. It's not, we're not writing for publication, although certainly somebody can be working on something that they want to publish. In some of the writing classes that I've facilitated, I've written chapters of, some of my manuscripts. So you can work on whatever you want, really. But I had two different groups going for a while before I moved to Vermont, and they were so fun. And I was going to start one in the spring, and then two of the people who were doing it, one of them had to have surgery, the other one broke her wrist, so they both said we can't write for a while. And then I had some major stuff going on, so we kind of just put it on hiatus until the fall. But I'm thinking of starting one in November. So if anybody's interested, you can text or call me. Should I give my number here, or will you send it out? Okay, so
we'll also include it in the link.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, Nicole, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Such a pleasure to have you here. It's we have not seen you in over a year, and
yeah,
and I know it's been up and down in your life, but it's just so beautiful to hear about your journey and be inspired by who you are and who you're becoming, because we're constantly becoming. So I hope you celebrate that as well as we are. As I said, for Christina and I, it's always an honor. It's just an honor to be here, to celebrate you, to let us be inspired by you, to be part of your journey and to share you with the world. I don't know how far the world reaches, but it will. So thank you for being here. And thank you out there for whoever is listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for following us. If you love this, please leave us a review. Please share it with your friends. And please always remember that you are extraordinary. You rock. Until next time.
Bye for now.
Yeah. Thank you so much.